Welcome back to Yin and Yang Healing, exploring beyond the physical. It's Dur and Kirstin here to talk to you about, well, Kirstin, you can introduce the topic today, but you're basically crying because we were just talking about a story about your ex, and I had to like hit record because I'm like, yo, like other people need to hear this because I'm sure a lot of people can relate to it. So do you want to like rewind and go back to like the start of like what you were telling me about? And just so like anyone tuning in knows, like this is about relationships, taking radical ownership, and awareness and healing for yourself and like the role that you played in a relationship. So anyway, Kirstin, like tell me like what you were telling me about your ex and the way you reached out and everything.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. It's like, it's so weird. My eyes are watering. I'm like, is it tears of like, tears of joy or laughter or like grief? Like, I don't know.
Probably all the above.
All the above. So yeah, so I reached out to my ex. It was kind of like on my heart to reach out to him, and just have a chat with him and take radical ownership of how I showed up in the relationship and how that like contributed. Because a lot of times in the relationship, he would say, I would say like, well, you need to go to EPT, like you need to see your practitioner, or like you need to go to counseling, like you have trauma and like you're projecting it on me and you need to work through that. And
yeah, sorry, can I pause for a sec? It's like
yeah,
this is a common like feminine thing, like well, female empowerment thing where it's like, you need to do this, you need to do that. Like, I'm so empowered. Look at me doing it. You need to fucking
I've
do it
done all
too.
the work already. Yeah, I'm perfect.
And it's like, you are a shitty guy. But like, anyway, keep
That's
going because you're
totally what it was like. I mean, I will say though, like anyone who knows me who listens to this episode is gonna be super defensive of me because like he did have his shit. I will say that. Like he did have his trauma and his like inability to trust women. Like he had stuff, right? That definitely made the relationship hard. But what I'm saying is like the way that I contributed didn't make it easier. It made it a lot harder and it just continued to like trash the relationship, like continue to like disrespect him. And it made it, I just feel like in my heart of hearts, if I had acted differently and I had taken ownership of my behavior in that relationship, things could have like been different, right? Because he had worked through like a lot of that stuff and things had shifted and changed. I did see that, but I continued to like emasculate him all the time out of like my need for control and safety. And it's complicated, like on
yeah.
how that like first came up in the beginning of the relationship, that feeling of lack of safety. So leaning into like being like hyper masculine and like also emasculating him at the same time. And so
Yeah, that's a
yeah,
topic in itself. And so yeah, you wanted to like
yeah,
take ownership of like the way that you showed up.
yeah, because like since we broke up, I just like all the things that have aligned. Like a friend recommended like this book and it was called Irresistibly Feminine. And like when I read that book and I was like, holy shit, like wow. I all the ways like of how I emasculated him, all the examples in the books and everything just like populated through my mind. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, it's me. Like I'm the problem. It's me. And so that was just like a wild epiphany. And then I kind of kept learning more and more and more about that dynamic and just kept like thinking about all the ways that I've like done that. And I don't think I was like especially emasculating in my past relationships. In my past relationships, I was emasculating in the way of like being too nurturing to like my boyfriends, like always taking care of them, fixing. But with my past, like my most current ex, I just really was like on the power trip of, hurt from past relationships and the way that I like to control and try to emasculate him and wear the pants and tell him what to do. And you should do this and you should do that and all the things. I was just
Yeah.
like, wow, I want to take ownership of that because I definitely felt a lot of guilt and a lot of shame, but you don't know what you don't know. Like I didn't know that in the relationship. I didn't have that book when I was in the relationship. I didn't have this information. So I didn't know how to like make it different, but I at least wanted to like apologize to him and take ownership of that piece. So I feel like that he could like move on in like healthier relationships too. from
So
having that
basically,
awareness, because that awareness
so
helped me so much.
sorry. So just getting back to the story, like you wanted to reach out to him to basically see if like he needed that and like and just own up to that in case he did need that. And so
Yeah,
you
yeah,
reached
I
out to
just wanted
him.
yeah, I reached out to him, and like he agreed to like go for a walk, but then he also was like, well, maybe we could have some fun, like hook up. And I was like, no, like I really want to like just chat about this. Like, let's just see like where that goes. I just really want to like chat. And I like told him, I said, I want to take ownership for like how I treated you in our relationship. Um, so yeah, he said he was down to like go for a walk, and then he just kept like being disrespectful. Um, you know, disrespecting my boundary of saying like I don't want to go there, and like I didn't message you to hook up. I just want to like talk. And he kind of kept disrespecting that and just showing me that he obviously didn't want that. He thought that was just a door in to like hook up with me again. And
Mhm.
I was like, no, like not happening. So I guess that conversation won't be happening with him because he just couldn't take his mind off anything else except for being like sexually intimate. So
Right. So you set your boundaries by just being like, okay, well, never mind. Like, this is my boundary. Like, it's just
I pretty much
talk.
said to him, I was like, just never mind like the walk. Like, obviously, this is a terrible choice, like messaging you, like, you know,
Obviously, you don't need that closure that I thought you needed, kind of thing. But hey,
yeah.
actually, I have a question now that were just talking about like emasculating and blah blah blah. Like now that I'm hearing this, I'm a little bit analyzing it as well, and I'm like,
Oh,
okay,
good.
well, in you asking him to go for a walk was
No,
like
it's emasculating.
it's yeah, you were communicating with him in a masculine way instead of just being like, I feel like I need to apologize to you and then just like leave it at that, or like
I
I
know.
feel bad, like because so like do you want to explain a little bit about because I've read the book that you
It's
mentioned earlier as
so
well.
funny that you mentioned that because the whole time that I was messaging him, as soon as I sent that, I was like, fuck, that's like masculine communication. And it's really hard sometimes because it's like, especially when you're communicating with a person who really like triggers that in you, like there's something about him that really just triggers me like deep into like my masculine control. Um, so it's really hard. Like, even I had said something like, what did I say? Oh, I was like, because he was asking to like hook up or whatever. And I was like, you know what? Like, let's just do one step at a time. And then I was like even that is like masculine. Like I'm telling
Yeah,
him like what to do basically.
yeah,
And then I just text back and I was like, what I meant to say was I need to take one step at a time and just talk first.
right.
And it was so hard, but it's funny, like you mentioned that, because as soon as I sent that text and asked him to go for a walk, and I was like, I just kind of knew it actually. I was like, this is never gonna happen because just of the way that I like asked him.
Right. Yeah. It's like you're not right or wrong for this. This is just like it's like how many of us have grown up in these like families or the society where it's like female empowerment, and like this is not to say that like women shouldn't feel empowered, but it's like the way that you communicate with someone who is primarily masculine energy is like so important, because if you
Yeah,
communicate in a masculine energy, who's the feminine energy? You're not creating that
yeah,
polarity, right? And so you
yeah.
have to like almost like rewire the way that you talk.
So on that, just something like popped into my head, like, yeah, you have to rewire the way that you talk. And when I look back in my relationship, he was actually like a very masculine guy, because if he wasn't, he would have just let me bulldoze him and like do whatever I want. He would have just been like, yes, Kirstin, like whatever you want. Right. And like that would have ended up being like repulsive to me. I think I fell more in love with him. And that's why I got so hurt at the end, because he did hold his own. He didn't let me bulldoze him. He didn't let me wear the pants. But he also, the problem with he also didn't know how to lead me out of my masculine energy. He didn't know how to like create that safety for me to like pull me away from that. So I think
Right.
that's where our relationship just didn't like wasn't sturdy like in that way. But even in this, I'm like, he is actually so masculine because he's not letting me like be in charge. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I hate it and it's like infuriating, right? But I really like see now I'm like actually he is like being masculine just kind of like in a douchey way.
Uh, so like I feel like we should definitely like dive in here a little bit more, talking about like this dynamic of like what is masculine communication, what is feminine communication, why is it important, blah 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 blah. But just before we do that, I just want to like touch on like how, like, regardless of the way you were communicating, the whole point of the story was that you realized your self-worth. And like I was saying to you earlier today, like you're basically, the dial on your self-worth button is turning up, and
Yeah.
that is what's going to allow you to like fully embrace your feminine energy and communication. So let's talk a little bit
Yeah.
more about that polarity and like what's the difference between masculine and feminine communication.
Um, yeah, that's a good question. So
Like, let's
math,
take an example from the
yeah,
story.
okay.
Like, let's take like the things you did say and like break it apart and be like, hey, what's masculine about this? And then like, how could we reframe it?
Right. So yeah, I guess like the very first thing I said was like, would you be willing to, I don't know how I worded it, but it was something like, would you be willing to meet up with me for a walk? I just want to like share some things about some realizations about how I like treated you in the relationship and take ownership for that.
Mm-hmm.
So just that in itself of me saying like, do you want to go for a walk? Like that's leading. Like I'm leading
Right.
him to an outcome of like going for a walk. So it's like
And
that,
masculine communication is leadership.
yeah, with a direction, right? Like an
Right.
outcome.
An outcome. Yeah. And so, okay, so now let's reframe it in the feminine communication, because for feminine communication, it's like it's to express your feelings
Right.
vulnerably without the expectation of an outcome. So let's figure out like what you could have said instead.
Oh, what could I have said instead? I could have said like I could have just said, "Hey, I'm feeling really vulnerable and I'm feeling really sad. I think the feeling is sad. Feeling really sad and I have some things on my heart that I would like to share with you." And like that would be it.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah,
even
it's
if
so
you wanted to take it a step further and like remove the piece of like what you want, you could have even just been like, hey, like, I just want to let you know that I feel really sad about the way things ended between us. And I realized that I also had a big part in it. And then that just gives him the opportunity to lead, to ask you a question. And then from
yeah.
there, you can go more into like those other pieces, right? But it's
Yeah,
like,
like that first initial piece, it's so hard. Even I'm like, I want to. Like I like straight away, I'm like, that's where like my default is that I'm trying to like break that pattern of like, okay, I want to like
right. Yeah. And we're
that's still
so
like
used to
outcome
that.
based. I know it's hard to break that pattern.
And I guess like, so for those like listening and watching, it's like the masculine energy um is like the leader and is like typically like the decision maker. And the feminine energy is more of like the receiver. And so when the feminine
And
energy
more
takes on that role, right?
submissive to that leadership. You're
And then what
like
happens if they like, what happens when it gets mixed?
yeah, and then I feel like when you're communicating when you're a woman communicating from the masculine to a masculine man, he basically just like shuts you out and like doesn't give you like what you want. You're trying to like get something but whether he knows it or not, he senses that that's like outcome seeking and leadership, and he's like, nah, I'm not into that, and he just shuts you down, and he like backs away, and he like gets distant.
And it's funny that you say that because you literally told me, you're like, this is what I said to him, and he like didn't even receive it. And it's because he's the masculine energy. He is not meant to receive.
I know.
And I really want to hear like what other people think about this. Like, I'm sure it's like a pretty unpopular opinion, but it just makes so much sense. It's like with my relationship, my girlfriend is a very much feminine energy and I'm a very masculine energy. And it's like, it's so weird because I didn't even understand this dynamic until I learned about this like polarity. And
Yeah.
I am very much like the fixer. And like I've always like we've always joked about it, like, oh, like you're such a dude, like you just want to fix everything. I'm like, yeah, I don't know why. I don't get it. But like now it makes sense. So like for the men listening or even the women listening, it's like the masculine energy wants to lead, wants to fix, wants to whatever. And like you might not want that, but like in receiving it, you're creating that polarity, and just like a magnet,
Right.
you
And when you're
attract.
not, like, I'm stealing that opportunity from him to lead, to fix. I'm like stealing that opportunity, which creates resentment. And I could feel that in the relationship the whole time. I could feel the resentment. I'm like, you resent me. And he's like, I don't. And I'm like, but I can feel it. And it's just something so subtle. It's like, even if he
Mhm.
doesn't consciously know that he's like resenting, that energy of that emotion is there because I'm robbing him of that joy to be the leader, to be the fixer, to take the relationship in the direction, to have the provision. I'm taking that away by me always having to like do it.
Yeah, and I think that is a really good point, that like these energies are pretty subtle. Like I give an example. It's like by default, my girlfriend like doesn't like to drive, doesn't like to like use the remote. She's like, I don't like to control the remote. I don't want to drive. I don't like driving. And it's like, I fucking love it. I'm like, sweet, give it to me. Like, and so like if you like see that dynamic in your relationship, that very much can like tell you like who is the feminine, who is the masculine energy. And like for like a typical heterosexual relationship, it's typically, I would say, like the woman is more feminine and the man
Well,
is more masculine.
like your natural state of being would be more feminine, and his natural state of being would be more masculine. But things get all like fucked up because women are like hyper masculine now. In
And
that, like
men are
in
being
that,
told
and
to
then
be
and
more.
men are being like men are being emasculated, told to be like more feminine, more in tune with their feelings, like more of that stuff. But like that's just not how they're. It's not how they're built.
That's
And then you
actually a
get
really
much,
good
and then
point.
if they are more feminine, you actually feel even more like unsafe, even more insecure, even more like, oh, like my needs are gonna be met. Like you feel even more like repulsed. And so you control even more, further emasculating him. It's just like the cycle that never ends. Oh,
Right.
just like this realization, like even just like still every time I talk about it, it just blows my mind on how we just like get caught up in that, and it really changes the dynamic of your relationship. And like, but you know what's so weird? Okay, something that's like earlier I said something about him triggers me deeply, like really truly. I don't know what it is, and I feel like him and I even have like this cosmic like tie, but something about him specifically triggers me deeply because when I'm around other men, when I'm around my grandfather, when I'm around like there's certain older men at work, when I'm around them, I'm so in my feminine. I am so like playful and like fun and like let them make decisions. Like I'm just so like there's some like I'm just so I feel so safe.
But
Something
okay, so
about
those men
that
though,
relationship.
are they devoted to making you happy?
I feel like in like the little ways, like they are.
Because it's like from what you've told me about your ex, it's like that's not his main priority, right? And so it's
No,
like
it was not.
you like, if you do like settle into this polarity, it's like, and this is something like that, you read about in that book, is the feminine has to learn to trust the masculine
Yeah.
to be able to deliver that. So it's like, yeah, you obviously have to give them the chance, first of all, but then you also have to have this sense of self-worth that like, hey, if you aren't going to do anything for me,
Yeah.
peace.
Which Which, yeah, like I didn't have that at all in the beginning, like in the relationship. I didn't have that at all. We moved in like way too quickly. So then I felt kind of like stuck. Like we moved in after knowing each other for a month. That's a huge mistake. Don't ever do it. You can never know someone in 1 month. And like it was just such a horrible, horrible mistake. And like when I first met him, like he wasn't working. Like there's just so many dynamics. He's going through like a health crisis. There's just like so many dynamics, and like I didn't feel safe. And then it was kind of like started turning into like, well, like how come like women don't take men out on dates and like that kind of energy. And I was like, huh? I was like,
Like
what are
he
you
was saying
talking
that.
about? Yeah. So
So
just
maybe that's why
kind
he
of,
triggered you so much, because that to me
yeah.
sounds like he is not embracing his masculine energy.
No, like super not. And like there's just all kinds of things there of like lack of trust, but it had nothing to do with me. It was just like past stuff for him and his lack of trust with women. And yeah, it kind of all got like projected onto me, and it was very like heavy and very intense a lot of the times. And that's probably why he does trigger me so much, because he also like, although he had very like masculine like qualities, the one thing that he was missing was being devoted like to me,
Mm-hmm.
even though he was like committed to me, but he wasn't like devoted to like my heart. So it
Yeah.
created like this constant place of like I constantly felt like I never felt like safe or like at ease. And I always felt like I had to like work more, or I had to like do more, or I had to like, spend more money on him to like, show the equality. And like he kept bringing up like, he's like, you feminists, he's like, you want like equality. And I was like, I'm not a feminist. I'm like, sorry to anyone out there who is, but like, I'm not. That's just who I am. I have a little bit more like conservative, like traditional like beliefs and values, and that's okay. But I never once ever said to him, I'm a feminist and I want equality. I'm like, I don't believe in equality. I believe in equity. I think equity and equality are not the same. And to have equity in a relationship means fairness. Equality doesn't necessarily mean fairness. And like one example of that is like, let's just the most popular example I've seen is like if you have, let's just say you have a child and you have an adult and you have a senior, and they all want to like ride a bike. Equality is giving each of them the exact same bike, right? That's equality, because they're all getting the exact equal value, the exact same bike. But
Right.
is that fair to everyone? No, it's not, right? It's not fair to everyone. Can the child ride a standard like adult bike? No. Equity is that the child gets the bike appropriate for them, the adult gets the bike appropriate for them, and the senior would get that bike appropriate for them. That's
Mm.
equity. And that to me is like fair and just. And we just always seem to like misunderstand each other like on that. So it created like this constant cycle of like his lack of trust in women and like my lack of trust in men. And it just kept being this like vicious cycle that like never ended.
And now you had that beautiful experience to help you uncover and evolve your feminine polarity.
Now I've just like learned so much. You know, it's so funny. So I have this funny story. So, like after learning all this of like polarity and everything like that, like, cause women, like, I think a lot of times we control too, it's because we want the best for our men. And like, women don't like seeing someone suffer. Like, we hate that. We hate, like, if you got knee pain or if you're like struggling to carry something, like, we hate that. And our brains are like multitasking and they're doing all these like things and coming up with all these ideas. Like, our brains like doing all that stuff. And so we can like analyze things like very quickly, whereas like the masculine energy or men are very a little more like now they're like, I have this like task. Okay, I'm like focusing on this task. Like, they're
Mm-hmm.
very like compartmentalized like in their brain that way. And so I think women want to like help and fix and like, don't do it that way. And like this is easier. This would be faster. Like it's just so natural for us to like come up with those solutions and like, but like
Mm-hmm.
ultimately at the end of the day, like that's not our job, right? Our job is to just like be in flow, and like be creative. But that's part of our thing is we come up with creative solutions, you know. So okay, so I'm at Staples one day. I'm like picking up an order or whatever, and there's quite a long lineup. This guy comes in and he's like, we're kind of walking in at the same time, and he kind of like blows past me, like he's trying to like rush past me. I'm like, dude, like chill. Like it was kind of rude, like the way that he like passed by me because we were like right in the doors and there wasn't really enough room. Anyways, so he like blows past me. I'm like standing in line. This guy gets like, you know, like a box of paper, like a whole box of paper.
Mhm.
So that's the very first thing that he picks up is like a box of paper. And he's got it like on his shoulders. And then like he needs something else. I don't know if he forgot he needed something else or like what. But he's like running, he's like looking in all the aisles like frantically. He's got this huge heavy box of paper on his shoulders. Doesn't ask anyone, doesn't anything, just like looking like frantically. I'm like, dude, like set down the paper or ask somebody like for help what you're looking for. And in my head, like that was like my first thought. But then my next thought was like, you know what? If I am ever in a relationship again and I was with this person, like let's just say we went in there together and he was carrying this like heavy ass box of paper around, I wouldn't fucking say a word. I'll just zip my lip and like if you want to break your back and be in pain and suffer, have at her. You know?
So, okay, yeah, that totally, that I 100%. And let's like, I'm thinking about like, what are ways that a feminine energy could talk to someone like that? So, like, right off the bat, like when you were talking about like feminine energy is like for being creative and whatever, it doesn't mean that you have to like necessarily just zip your mouth and shut the fuck up. It could be as simple as being like, I have so many ideas on how to do XYZ better, faster.
Yeah.
Just, and that's just a statement. You're just saying how you feel, what's in your brain. You're not saying like, do you want to know them? Do you want to know? But the masculine energy's job is to be like, oh, what are those ideas?
But I still feel like even if he asks and you like share them, I feel like he wouldn't necessarily take you up on them because they're not his idea.
Right.
I feel like that is like the one trend I've noticed with men like my whole entire life is like men like it when it's their idea. The
Yeah,
masculine
but
energy likes it when it's their idea.
I guess I'm just thinking more from like the perspective of like those women who are just like, well, I don't want to just fucking sit here and like never say anything and whatever.
Why?
And you,
It's so much easier and you don't have to stress.
but you could still be stress free by just literally expressing. You just express it. If he
Yeah.
asks you the ideas, okay, just say them, but don't
Yeah.
expect, like you said, don't expect him to take them and actually implement them. But let me just tell you, like, from a more masculine energy perspective, one day he'll be doing the fucking thing and he'll be like, maybe I should just try that other way. And he will decide to do it. And he'll be like, wow, I'm glad that I tried that way because it's so much easier. I'm fucking awesome. And you'll be sitting there laughing. You'll be like,
That's what
actually,
I
I'm
thought.
fucking awesome.
Oh, that's so funny. I feel like I haven't learned the art yet, but I feel like there is an art to learning like feminine communication and learning how to um like to like help men out like in those scenarios without like making it seem like you are. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like there's like okay, it just popped in my head like, you know, asking him like, is there a better way for you to do this? Like prompting him, like asking him like questions. So instead of you being
Mhm.
like, these are like my ideas,
You can
like
ask
you
permission
get
as
like
well.
empowering him to say like, is there another way that you could do that?
Mm-hmm. And well,
Right?
and masculine really likes to be likes to grant permission. So just asking like, can I show you a different way?
Yeah.
Because you're asking permission, so you're not taking the lead.
Yeah.
he still has the choice to lead there or not lead there. And you
True.
could also just be as like simple as just going and doing the thing in your way without saying anything, literally just showing by example. And it's like, and I feel like this is a common topic that comes up in like this conversation with like masculine, feminine, blah, 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 is like how the masculine energy can often be like a child if the feminine energy doesn't like respect the leadership. And
Right.
that
Totally.
is exactly like, so that's a prime example of like how you're kind of teaching the child to grow up. It's like you're leading, you're showing by example. Like that's what we do with kids, right? We show them by example, we do the thing. And like for a grown adult, you don't have to necessarily say anything. You just do it and they'll be like, oh, well, they're doing it that way. Oh, I can do it that way.
I think that's a big lesson to learn, like in all like adult relationships, is like your words don't mean much. Like stop telling people what to do or giving people advice. Like show the way, show your boundaries. Don't say your boundaries or tell your boundaries. Show, show people your boundaries, right? Show people like what you're doing and how well it's working. Like show them. People do well with like seeing,
Yeah, for sure.
like
I mean,
man or woman.
that's how we grow up, right? Like we literally grow up observing our parents and like seeing how they do things. And yeah, it's a pretty like natural process,
So
but
do you think when what I actually said in my text to my ex was, I was wondering if you would want to meet me for a walk sometime this week?
very, yeah, very masculine. Like, do you want to do this? And
Yeah.
specifically this.
Yeah. Dang.
So I know it's like pretty amazing. Like once you start like analyzing yourself, right? So
Yeah.
it's like,
I sent it. I was like, dang.
and in the beginning, I'm sure it's gonna be like pretty hard to like always having to think about what I say and how I say it, but like it will just become natural, right?
But that goes back to the piece of like the self-worth, right? Because like now my self-worth dial is like turned up, like you said. And it's like, I feel like the next guy that I'm with, I wouldn't choose a guy who doesn't respect me. I wouldn't choose a guy who is not like taking leadership in his own life, right? To take leadership in his life with me. I wouldn't choose like that person again. I would choose a person who would make me feel safe and relaxed like as a person so that I can lean into my femininity, because leaning into your feminine side is leaning into the vulnerable. And it's like it's really hard to like lean into the vulnerable when you're feeling like your reality is like not safe,
Mhm.
that you're not like safe and protected. It's really hard to like lean into that when it's constantly being like threatened. So I would never
Right.
choose a person like that. Again, I would take my time. There's this other book that I really like. It's called No More Assholes. Um, and she just talks a lot about like the 3-month dating rule, which is like no kissing, like no sleepovers, no exclusivity, no sex, no nothing, for 3 months minimum of getting to know somebody, so that you can really take that time to get to know that person. And most people are like, I would never not kiss for 3 months. And like I used to think that all the time, and like, what's the point of waiting? Like you need to know if the chemistry's there and all that. And I'm like, no, I need to know if your character is there. Like now I'm really in this place of like, I feel so worthy of like waiting, because I need to know that your consistency is there, that you are gonna lead me out when I'm being masculine, that you are gonna like protect and provide. I need to know that. I need to know that I can like trust your leadership, that you show good
Right.
leadership in your life.
And I guess like just taking the ownership of coming into it with the like awareness and knowledge of like if I start out in my feminine energy, like will that help us build that bond better, faster, stronger? Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Because I was, yeah, when we met too, I was very much in my masculine energy. Like Oh, just like cringe when I think back of the times where I was just like right in the beginning where I was just so like wanting to make sure that no one ever hurt me again, or like didn't, that was, I didn't want to be with someone who's like selfish in bed and like all these things. And I was like, I'm gonna like make sure. And like when it's literally so cringy when I think back to how I communicated that. I'm like, "Oy."
Mhm.
So I think things would just like flow differently too, because I wouldn't be like that again in my next relationship. I've learned to soften a lot and to self nurture and like self soothe myself and like my like insecurities in that way. And a lot of it like ultimately came down to like the self-worth, like because I didn't have enough self-worth to like walk away in those past relationships. I just endured the shitty behavior. And then the next relationship is like, never gonna have that again, with my
Right.
sassy pants on. And I will never have that again, but I don't need to like tell that to a guy like right after we're like, sexually intimate. I don't need to do that anymore, right? Because I'm showing things with my behavior and my self-worth differently than before when I was just trying to shout it from the rooftops.
So like what are your like go-tos for healing those pieces of yourselves to be able to move forward in that way?
I think like awareness is like number one. If you're in denial that you emasculate men, you're just always going to stay in that cycle 1,000%. So awareness for sure. You have to have the awareness that you're doing it. Um, and then yeah, I think doing like the emotional work on it for sure, because there was just like a lot of stuff like for me that always just felt like not my shit. Like it's generational for me anyways. Like it really is generational, like that pattern of like not trusting men, and like that has like been built into me. And like the relationships that my grandma like attracted, the relationships that my mom attracted, the relationships that I attracted, like from all of that, it's like I can see the pattern very clearly of how it all like trickled down. So like doing the
Mhm.
emotional work and looking at your grandparents' relationship, looking at your parents' relationship, and seeing like what are like those similarities there, having the awareness, and then choosing to break that cycle by saying, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to show up different. I'm going to read some books. I'm going to listen to some podcasts. I'm going to like take this program to like un undo these patterns that have been like knitted in me like by the generational line.
Yeah, and you might even have this feeling of like, I think I'm doing that, but like I literally just have no idea how I'm doing that or why I'm doing that. And so I feel
Yeah.
like that's really when it becomes so important to work with someone like yourself to like be that so that you have that mirror and someone like showing you like, hey, like these are the patterns. It's like the
Yeah.
text message, for example, it's like you didn't even realize you were doing it in the moment
I know. And it's
until you
even like
reflected back.
I can like see it. Like I have a girlfriend and she's like messaging me all the time. She's like dating and like she's messaging me, and when she is like giving it to me of like her text and everything, I can like break it down and I'm like, yes, like don't say this and don't do that. And she's like, oh, like I'm so like glad I have you to like show me all these like things. And I'm like, yes. And I know all the things, right? Even
Mhm.
me. But it's like as soon as I got into like that text with my ex and like got back into that trigger, got back into like that pattern of like being masculine and like feeling unsafe, like everything about him makes me feel so unsafe. And it just automatically, I'm like in that like masculine energy, like right away. And it's like when you're getting triggered like that, you need help. You need help out of it, because I am triggered with him. I read the message to you and instantaneously you were like, that sounds like masculine communication.
Right.
Right? Like straight
Yeah.
away, you just like you knew. And I was like, even I knew, but it was like too late, I already like sent it. And it's like, yeah, you really need help out of like that pattern. And like maybe you need help out of like the pattern of like why you're getting triggered like by that other person, and that awareness on why you're getting triggered like by the other person. Because like
Okay.
just us talking through it, I was kind of having like this epiphany of like why I'm get triggered like by him so deeply.
Okay, getting feedback on your messages is amazing. So, if you don't mind, I want to just throw out this offer to those that are listening. And you can set like you set the amount. Use like go into the description of this show right now and use the link to sign up to our email list. And the first, I don't know, you tell me how many people that sign up and reply to the first email with the message that you want to send, and have Kirstin tell you, dissect it, analyze it. How many how many do you think you could do, Kirstin?
Um,
20?
I was just
I
funny.
want to put a limit.
I was thinking like I was thinking 20. And you know what? Okay, after this, I'm gonna tell you this idea that I have. I think it's a really good idea. And I think that might be something to stay tuned to that I'll be like offering as a service.
Okay, sweet. So I just want to recap. Go in the description of the show right now. There's a link. And when you click that link, you can sign up to our email list. When you sign up to the email list, we will email you and you can reply back to that with a message you want Kirstin to analyze and give you feedback on. And the first 20 people to do that will get it free of charge.
Yeah, I love that.
That is sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, I love that so much. So that kind of ties into what I was kind of thinking of doing. Because even in our first podcast, you had mentioned that like when you were going through like relationship stuff, you didn't really have anyone that you could like talk to like about things.
Yeah.
And just like even in my relationship, I think even if you do have people like this, so you didn't have anyone, so there's that issue, right? I had everyone to talk to. Like I had girlfriends, I had my mom, like my sister, like I had so many people, but it was like too many people, There's just like too many people getting advice from. And then when my ex would like kind of figure out that I was like talking to them, he got super pissed off, like major, major resentment because of that. And so what I wanted
Which
to
kind
offer,
of makes sense. Like, I don't
yeah,
blame him,
I
especially
don't
like if
blame
you're
him
forming a
either.
long-term relationship and then now
Yeah.
you know that all of your like people that you're going to go hang out with in the future knows about all the shitty fucking shit that you did. So
No,
I totally
but it
get
was
that.
just like
But
it was so rough, like for so long, all the shit we were going through and everything. Like I would have literally like wanted to like kill myself if I had to keep that all in, because it was heavy as like it really was. There was
yeah, I bet.
so much there. The jealousy, the like the insecurity, the like mistrust of like it was all so heavy. And I couldn't keep it in, and I had nowhere to like put it out. Like I
Yeah.
was gonna lose my mind. It was bad.
So
So
with that being said, if you need someone to talk to who is, outside of your whole family picture, obviously Kirstin's your girl.
yeah, so I my plan is to like offer a membership on that, where there's like a monthly membership, and then you have access to call me about like those situations. And then I can help you take radical ownership, help lead you out of like your masculine energy, lean into your feminine. I just give you like that coaching on that. And then that way you get the support that you need in the relationship, but you're not venting it to your friends and your family. And like, you're keeping your relationship clean. You're keeping it like pure. You're respecting that relationship. And you're also not paying like $200 an hour to see a psychologist to hear you. You can just like talk to me like your girlfriend.
Right. That's amazing. So yeah, we'll make sure that we link that in the emails. So make sure you guys sign up for the email list. Because we'll make sure we put details in there.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're kind of wrapping up here.
Yeah.
So any closing remarks that you would like to give?
Yeah, I think that like once you have an awareness on this and like how important it is, I feel like things really do start to shift and change in your world. And although they might not change in the current relationship, like in my relationship, for example, we burnt the bridge. Like we totally burned it down. There was no, you just get to a point where there's no rebuilding it. And that's okay. Like sometimes that's just how life goes. But when you do this work and you have the awareness, you take radical ownership for your choices, because you choose to enter relationships, right? You make that choice, nobody forces you. And when you choose to take ownership of your like how you show up in that relationship, things really change in your life for your future relationships, and not just for you, but with your family, because like I was saying, it's generational. So I've really noticed, so at Easter, my grandma was, she's very like, it all goes back. She's very independent, you know what I mean? Like doesn't need anyone, like she's got it. But then that emasculates my grandpa. And so it creates that issue between them, right? And it's like, well, she wants him to show up in a certain way, but then she's emasculating him. So it's like she like can't get out of like that. And even she had said at Easter, she's like, what? She's like, I'm independent. And I'm like, yeah, that's the problem. Like that's the issue actually. So, and I was just telling her, she was like trying to open this bottle of wine. And I was like, just ask him to open it. Say, I need help,
Yeah.
like give him like that job. And then he did. He totally like lit up and he was like, yeah, he's like, I'm what did he say? He was like, I'm useful for something or something like that, and he literally opened it in 2 seconds. And she's like struggling.
Mm.
She's got this like sharp knife. I'm like, please, just like give the bottle to him, like just give him. And he felt the purpose, he felt
Just
like good. He like
receive.
fixed it. He just, yeah. And what was interesting though is not that piece, but I'm looking at my mom, and my mom is witnessing like what's happening. And my mom's very hyper, like masculine. She even like she admits it, like she's just a very masculine woman, very independent. She's got like her whole garage is like filled with tools. Like, she's like she's just a go-getter. She just gets it done. She has a problem, she fixes it. Like she's just a masculine like woman, and she's okay with it. But in me healing in all of this and talking about like feminine energy and how to be softer and how to trust men and how to like lean into their leadership and create that space for them, I've seen this dynamic like shift, because she was witnessing what was happening with my grandma and grandpa. And she was like looking at me, and we're looking at each other, and I'm like, are you seeing this? She's like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, it's cringy to witness it, like to see it. Like, because you could, a year ago, if that scenario would happen, we wouldn't have even blinked an eye. There would be no awareness on that. But not only me is having the awareness on it, but my mom is having the awareness on like what was happening there. And totally, she was like agreeing with me. I was telling my grandma, I said, you can't treat him like a child. And then she was upset that
And then
she said
expect him to
something to
act
me
like
that
a man.
I was lucky that like my grandpa washed my car and like vacuumed it out, because he never does that for her. And I was like, my mom said something like, even if he had offered to do it, you would have said like, no, don't worry, like I'll do it next week. Like you wouldn't even let him. And it's just like that awareness, like in my family line between like the 3 generations. I was like, that's wild to like have that much of a shift just from like the stuff that I have been doing to like heal that. This is like
Yeah.
creating like awareness that's like rippling backwards now. And it's beautiful.
Yeah. Generational healing is unreal. And I will definitely talk a lot about that on, the episodes where we dive into some of my topics here. But
Yeah.
I just want to leave with, from someone who is very much a masculine energy in a relationship with someone who's a feminine energy. Yes, please just start receiving, because the masculine energy is like to give. For someone to receive what you're giving gives you purpose in your life. And
Receiving is the gift. Like if you're the feminine energy or you're the feminine woman, receiving is the gift.
yes, that's your gift to the masculine energy, is
And
just to
if the
receive what they're
masculine
giving.
doesn't see that as the gift, then they're emasculated and you have an imbalance in the polarity.
Yeah. I just, that just came up for me, like when you were telling the story about the bottle of wine, because it's like, for me, as that masculine energy, I would be like, oh my God, they need me. Yes. It's like,
Yeah,
I feel
right?
purpose. And it's like,
Yeah.
why don't you want your person to feel that way of like, yes, I have purpose in my life. And literally all you have to do is just be like, I need your help.
Yeah. My grandpa's like, all you had to do was ask, you know,
Yeah.
right? Like, and I'm like, wow, like how beautiful is like that scenario. And then like, then you don't cut yourself or you don't hurt yourself or you don't like, you don't struggle. As like to be like the feminine, it's actually like so easy. It's so easy,
And the
instead of
more
like,
you
I
do
have
that,
to struggle. I like my parents struggle. I have to struggle. Like, I have to struggle to like show and prove like how independent I am, how I can do it on my own, and like nothing can take me down. Like I have to struggle. It's like, no, you don't have to struggle.
it's
Like
like
you
you
don't.
can
The
still
masculine
be
is there.
independent.
Let it support you.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously like parts of your life where you're always still going to need to be independent in some way. Like
Oh
the
yeah.
other person won't always be there. But with that being said, it's like, yes, these
Like,
very small things
you
are like
know,
little tiny things you can do to make your person feel so lit up and also reinforce
yeah.
to them that it feels good to give to you. So you will
And they're
start
needed
getting more.
and they feel like needed and they have like purpose in your life. If you're constantly like, no, I don't need you and I can do it on my own, you're basically telling that person like you have no purpose. Like you have no purpose. You have no purpose. What's funny is like I've been seeing like these videos on like TikTok and Instagram, and it's like this video of like this girl like reaching like up in the cupboard, and it says like when my husband is home, and she's like reaching and struggling, and the husband like comes and he like gets the bowl, and then it's like when my husband's not home, and she like jumps up on the counter like Spider-Man and like you know reaches up and grabs it. It's like just because you can do it on your own doesn't mean you have to. So it's like, if your spouse is not there, absolutely do it. Of course you can do it on your own. Of course you can like, grab a chair. Of course you could change the light bulb. Of course, like whatever. But it's like if
Mhm.
he's there, why wouldn't you have them like do it? You know what I mean?
Right. Without expecting an outcome.
Yeah.
That's the tricky part.
It is
Yeah,
a
us
tricky part.
masculine energies are a little bit confusing in that way, but that's why the feminine is so brilliant because you can,
It's just
switch back and forth.
it's just a matter of like so like if the feminine, like the natural feminine energy was raised in a way to like be masculine, never knew how to like trust that feminine like energy, never knew how to like lean into it or cultivate it or like feel safety, then I feel like that's a skill to learn. Like it's just like going to yoga or like taking tennis lessons. Like you are gonna have to practice that skill, the art of being feminine, the art of like not expecting the outcome, right? The art of
Right.
not leading, the art of receiving. Like
Mhm.
it is an art and you have to like learn it and practice it. And it's just something that comes like over time. You're not gonna like read that book or like have a call with me or like take a program with me and then be like, poof, okay, like yeah, I'm ready to go. It's like it takes consistent effort to like reprogram that pattern.
Yeah, we could definitely dive deeper into that on the next one because I think that's like gonna take us a whole nother hour, but
There's so
but
many
yeah,
things.
you're right. And I think that's definitely something that we'll cover again soon. So
Yeah, so
um
excited.
I'm gonna wrap it up, Kirsten. We're hitting
Yeah.
about an hour now. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. And if you're watching
Thank
on
you.
YouTube, please make sure that you subscribe so you know when we release another episode. And if you're listening just to our beautiful voices,
Yeah.
make sure you also follow so that you know when we post a new episode.
Right.
And
And
remember, if
subscribe on and subscribe if you're on like Spotify so that you get the notifications of our new episode too.
right, yes. We're on quite a few different like podcast platforms. So yeah, whichever platform you're on, make sure you use that version of subscribe so that it notifies you. Um, and don't forget that if you want Kirsten to give you a free analysis, the first 20 people to sign up on that email list.
Yeah, the code for it will be in the show notes. Figure something out.
Awesome. Sounds good. And we will talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye, friends.